Hello and welcome back to Halos. I'm Cynthia and we are talking about preliminaries before we get interested in the deeper meanings of the tarot cards. So up to now I have given 8 lessons that help to set a foundation for this kind of a practice of spiritual advising. And I have 2 more lessons and then we can get into the actual interpretation, the deep interpretation of the tarot deck itself. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about the various types of spiritual advising styles and how you can find your niche. There's a lot of different things going on in spiritual advising, and everybody finds a different way to express their spiritual gifts of intuition and being able to be predictive. So with that said, let's talk about different spiritual advising methods that different people have a talent for, and you might have a talent for one and not the other. There isn't very many people, if any, that I've ever heard of that have all of these. However, you might experience some one time and some the other, or at different phases of your life. You might have one now and then later in your life you'll have a different ability. It all comes from the same intuitive supernatural gift that you have. So the first one on my list is Astral Projection, and that means that you, like in a dream, most people have dreamed that they've been flying or out of their body, and some people are able to do that at will, and that's called Astral Projection. If you're not comfortable with it, don't do it. If you are comfortable with it, you'll know it. So that's all that is. Automatic writing is a process by which the highest divine being comes to tell you what to write. And most religions that have written scriptures report that that is how they receive them. So some people claim that they can do that and go into sort of a mesmerized trance state and write things. And I have no experience with that at all. I did meet somebody that claimed she could do that, and she said that she was told by many people, and she wasn't in the Christian religion at all, but she said everybody who's read what she wrote was told her that it was very similar to the book of John. So I happen to have a stack of little pocket book of Johns with me in my trunk for some reason. And I said, well, I have one, I can give it to you, you can compare notes. And she got back to me and said, I can't believe it, it's practically the same thing, and I've never read it before. So that was interesting. Then there is something called Bilocation, and that is usually attributed only to saints where they're physically present in 2 places at once. The only example I've ever seen on that was an episode of Charmed, the original Charmed, in which one of the characters, Prue, somehow was able to make herself into 3 different people. And then in another episode she was able to astral project, but somehow it was sort of a blend between astral projection and bilocation, because she was able to appear to people while she was doing that. So then there's divination. That's what most people do when they do spiritual advising using tarot cards, rune stones, palmistry, astrology, tea leaf reading. Those kinds of things are all divination. And there's other forms of it. The I Ching, for example, anything that's lot casting oriented would be divination. And that kind of thing does appear in many different religions' scriptures. So, and it's usually referred to as positive. It doesn't, in some religions, they don't want you to do it in the same fashion as their enemies, but they're okay with doing it in the way that they do it. So Lot casting seems to be something that is universal in every religion in antiquity. Then there's dowsing. Dowsing is also called water witching. It is where you take a willow branch that is forked, so it's like the letter Y. You hold it, and the branch will dip when you stand over water. And I know people that swear that it's absolutely accurate. Many people do. So that's something that they also sell very thin wands that do that, and you hold them like this and they cross over when they're over water. And some people use that method to look for things like coins and jewelry as well. So I haven't ever tried it, but I think it would be really a nice thing to do. And if I had my choice, I'd rather have a branch from a willow tree than any other method. I think that would be the nicest, but also for me, I think it would be the prettiest. And I like to do things that are pretty, so that's the way I would want to go with it. I want the pretty item. Then there's the Retrocognition, and that's influencing electricity with your thoughts. And that might have something to do with, and I don't really know the term for this, but I've heard of it from a few people, your body's magnetic field reverses or is reversed. And because of that, people that wear wristwatches that have that, the wristwatch works fine until they put it on and then it stops and won't work ever again. Or I've heard of people that go through the checkout line at the store and the cash register messes up, or the credit card messes up, or electric, the cell phones, if they hold them, the cell phone will stop working. It won't get broken, but they won't get good reception. If they stand too near a television set, the reception goes all off. So some people have Pyrokinesis, and they don't necessarily have to choose to use it. It's just a polarity of your body's electric magnetism, and it's flipped. And so you can, just by standing somewhere, you can mess up other electronics. Levitation is a spiritual gift, and some people have been reported as having that. The only person that I know of that was able to do that was Jesus. In the Bible, he was able to walk across water, he was able to ascend into heaven, things like that. So that is a very spiritual thing to be able to do. Mediumship and channeling. That is when you become kind of like a radio or a television set yourself. Your body is used to channel, like a TV channel, the radio waves, so to speak. The radio waves are TV waves from the spirit world through, and then it comes out and you speak what you're being shown. So, a lot of people have said that they can do that. And one psychic person that was on television in the 1990s, was a frequent guest on a very popular talk show, said that they were able to do that. And I never name names. I always think people can tell their own stories. But from what I read about that particular incident was that they actually were tested, like hooked up with electrodes or something, and it showed that they really did have some electronic evidence of that, that medical doctors were able to detect. So that was not a made-up thing, although people do tend to make fun of that because it's kind of unusual. And I'm thinking of sitcoms that have shown characters pretending to do this, and it's humorous. So, but it really isn't. In practice, it's a very serious practice, and it's to be taken very seriously. And currently, every spiritual advisor that I have been able to find that's popular right now uses this method of spiritual advising, because they want to help bring departed loved ones' messages to the grieving. And I guess that if you're on a stage, this isn't really convenient to use. This is for a one-on-one kind of a reading, but when you're on a stage with a huge audience, you can't do things like tarot readings, tea leaf readings, palmistry. So a different gift is the channeling, and that's easier to use. And these people, many of them, have also been tested by neurology departments and had electrodes placed on their heads. Some of them, I read about this, that's the only way I know. You might be able to read about it too. And the neurology departments at various medical schools have said their brain chemistry or their brain electricity really changed, and it was quite a phenomenal thing to see. So it's something that's very real. Prophecy has two definitions. Biblical prophecy refers to the big ticket biblical prophets that heard directly from Spirit, from God, and that is a situation where they can't make any mistakes. But then later on in scriptures, different scriptures, it says that every person is to seek out prophecy from God, and it doesn't guarantee that people won't make mistakes. It's more like discernment, and you can have you can develop your intuition so that you can report your discernment of spirit, your spiritual discernment to people, and you might not always be perfectly right, but your heart's in the right place. You can sense danger, you can sense evil, you can sense foreboding or bad decisions being made and things like that. So then there's psychokinesis, and that is a person that can move matter with their mind. I've never seen that, except for, once again, on TV shows that display magic tricks by the power of, the camera. So different sitcoms and series display that, but it's a special gift. If someone has it, it's very rare. Then we have pyrokinesis, which is someone that can control fire with their mind and their will, and I've never seen that one either. Shape-shifting indicates someone that can change shapes. So, a lot of these, I was at a metaphysical center for a long time, but nobody that I ever met had any way to accomplish any of these things. And then transfiguration, which is a religious version of shape-shifting. No, it's not. Transfiguration is different. That's when people who have died and have went to be with God, with their Maker, have been permitted to come back in a physical but very spiritualized form, and for a very special message to give to mankind. So that's those people are usually ministering spirit, is what they're called in scripture, if you ever wanted to look that up. Then there's ESP, and that's extrasensory perception. That means you can read what's on somebody's mind or send messages with your mind. Lots of times, most people have that, but they don't have it unless they're asleep. So if you have a really vivid dream, it could be that someone is trying to send you a message, and it will come through garbled or symbolic. But you'll get a vivid dream, and that's really ESP. Someone's trying to get through to you. Clairvoyance is to see things happening far away that are currently going on. So close your eyes and you visualize someone, and instead of just imagining them, you're not leaving your body, but you can see in your mind's eye what they're doing, and it's accurate. And those kinds of things have been tested, and where they've had the person that said they were clairvoyant in one room with a blindfold, and they've met someone, and then or shown their picture or something, and then what are they doing in the other room, and it's all being recorded, and they're correct. And then dream telepathy. That's where people communicate with each other through dreams. So you could send someone a dream or a message in a dream, and that is, it's a little different than ESP, I guess. You can send ESP in dreams, but you can also send ESP messages in your conscious and waking time. So I guess ESP is when you're awake, and dream telepathy would be ESP when you're asleep and dreaming. And the daytime ESP would be more like a daydream, but it's a vivid message that you're getting. And then dermo-optical perception is where you're able to feel things. So if you're giving a reading to somebody and you get an ache or a scratch or a headache or a ringing in your ear or something, that might indicate that someone that you're giving a reading about is experiencing pain in that part of their body, or some sort of a feeling in their part of their body. Then there's psychometry, and that is when you hold an object and you get energy from it, and you are able to determine what happened to the object or what happened to the person that owned it. Then there's precognition, that's to know something in advance. And remote viewing is to see at a distance a target. So that's somehow the same as one of the other ones I read, which I can't find now, but it's similar. Some of these are kind of similar. And then retrocognition means you can look back in time and see what happened accurately. It's similar to watching a videotape of something you made before. And then telepathy is to send mental messages, which is the same thing as ESP, and dream telepathy. So those are the kinds of spiritual gifts that a lot of people have that they feel is beyond the natural abilities. And so those things can all help you if you're a reader, if you do tarot or other, but you might, knowing this before we get into tarot, you might say, well, I have another gift, I'd rather pursue that instead of learning tarot, or you might want to learn tarot anyway. But those are just some of the gifts and how they come up in spiritual advising, and they're very helpful to people. So just so you know what they are, as you get involved with this, you'll hear people say that they have these different things, and you'll want to know what they are. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you in the next video.